Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the February meeting of Leeds Council Executive Board. I'll remind everybody that this meeting is webcast, and welcome to anybody that's watching online. And with that, I'll turn to the formal items at the top of the agenda. Item 1, any appeals against refusal of inspection of documents, please?
Thank you, Chair. To confirm, no appeals have been received for today's meeting.
Thank you. Is there any exempt information, please?
Yes, Chair. Should the board be agreeable, then Appendix B to item 15, which is the Capital Receipts Programme Update, which is designated as being exempt from publication under Access to Information Procedure Rule 10.43, would be considered in private at the conclusion of the public part of the meeting.
Thank you. Are there any late items, please?
There are no formal late items, Chair. However, prior to the meeting, board members have received supplementary information for inclusion within agenda item 13A, 24-25 Revenue Budget and Council Tax Report in the form of Annex 2, which is a statement of the 23 and 24 and 24-25 budgets by service, and also a revised Appendix 10, which is budgeted movements in earmarked reserves for 24-25.
Thank you. I'll turn to the board. Are there any declarations of interest, please?
Yes, in relation to item 13, I'm a trustee of Bates Charity in a personal capacity. So once that item comes, I shall leave the meeting and take part in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rafiq. Are there any further declarations of interest? Nope. Okay, I shall turn to item 5 in the minutes of the meetings held on the 13th of December and 15th of January. Take it the board is happy with those. Great, thank you. We'll move on to the first paper on the agenda, which is item 6, please, Councillor Pryor.
Thank you, Chair. So this paper presents the results of Ofsted's inspection of the Council's Employment and Skills Service, Adult Learning and Apprenticeships. Given it is Apprenticeship Week at the moment, I'm delighted to announce that we were found to be outstanding in all areas. Leeds has previously been found to be good and we're the first local authority to receive an outstanding judgment of the new framework, which started in September 2019. Particularly pleased to be announcing this in the same week we held our apprenticeship fair, where we had record numbers attending, 11,000 attending in the first direct arena, with 125 employers there. I shall leave it there for opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pryor. Are there any comments on this paper, please? Councillor Lamb, please.
Very brief, just to welcome the paper and congratulate everybody involved in delivering such a good outcome. It's a really important area, and it's great news. So well done.
Thank you. Eve, would you like to come in, please?
Thank you, Leader. My name's Eve Rudhouse. I'm Chief Officer for Culture and Economy. All I would like to say is thank you to all the staff that are part of the Employment and Skills team for their incredible focus on delivering for our learners in the city and the outcomes. The report talks about how the service transforms people's lives, and that's thanks to the work that our staff do, but also the partners that work with us through the service. So a massive thank you to everyone involved.
Thank you, Eve. I think we'd all add our thanks to everybody that's been involved in this really great work. With that, I'm going to turn to the recommendations on page 27, and I take it the board are happy with those recommendations. That's great. So we could move on to item 7, please, Councillor Pryor.
Thank you. So this is the determination of school admission arrangements for 25-26. This is, of course, just for the 98 community and voluntary controlled maintained schools. It doesn't cover academies, voluntary aided foundation trusts or free schools who have their own admission arrangements. The main feature of this paper is probably the PAN reductions in Hunslet Cart, Rothwell Victoria, Moore Allerton Hall and Hawksworth Wood. We know that there is some shifts in the population around the city and some declining birth rates in some areas of the city. So I welcome these consultations on these PAN reductions. Shall leave it there.
Thank you, Councillor Pryor. I don't see any comments on this paper, so I'll turn to the recommendations on page 41, and I take it the board are happy with what's recommended. That's great. Come to the end of Councillor Pryor's papers, now on to Councillor Rafiq's papers, item 8, and we're joined by Councillor Stuart Galton, who's the relevant scrutiny board chair for this item, and I'll bring Councillor Galton in later on in the item. So Councillor Rafiq, please.
Thank you, Leader. This report reflects on the key deliverables in 2023 across the green spaces, and also responds to the scrutiny statements and recommendation that were issued following the meeting of the scrutiny board, which is Environment, Housing and Communities, which Councillor Galton chairs on the 12th of October 2023. In response to the scrutiny statement, the service will liaise with ward members to refresh the classification of parks across the city against the criteria set out within the report. The service has also proposed that how it will work alongside the neighbourhood planning process when developing a plans on a page, and how we will continue to work with the parish and town councils as well. The report also details the Leeds Quality Parks Assessment. The proposal is to change the way Leeds Quality Parks Assessment are carried out. We are proposing that a third of parks carried out each year instead of all parks every year on a rota basis, starting with parks with a lower assessment. This will actually free up resource capacity. At the same time, it will put more quality into how the assessments are done with a third, which we'll do on a every third year, a third of every of the parks classified. Yeah, I'll stop there. Happy to take any question and comments.
Thank you, Councillor Rafiq. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, Councillor Galton, please.
Thank you, Chair. I won't spend too long talking because the paper speaks for itself. All I will say is the motivation for the board members to take on this subject matter is because the council had already published a very ambitious Parks and Green Space strategy in 2022, which was followed very quickly by a very welcome study by the West Yorkshire Mayor into the safety of women and girls in parks. And we were also aware, of course, of the background situation of the budgetary pressures on the council and therefore the reduced resources available to the Parks Department to achieve some of their ambitions. And we were very keen that in the spirit of asset-based community development that we made recommendations that ensured that communities who feel great ownership of their local parks could be enabled to participate in how those parks developed and improved in the future. And I'm glad to see that our conclusions have been wholeheartedly endorsed by the department. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Galton, and thank you for the work of the board on this as well. Councillor Lamb, please.
Yeah, thank you. Just briefly, I think it's a good piece of work by Scrutiny. As you know, I'm a big fan of Scrutiny, and I think this shows the power and effect of doing things and making decisions in this way. So I congratulate the Scrutiny Board on their work, welcome the report, and I think encourage Council to do more work like this. And I think we get more consensus-based decision making and get to a good outcome.
Thank you. Councillor Rafiq, do you want to sum up, please?
No, I really appreciate the work done by Scrutiny Board, and we welcome the recommendations. But also, I think, you know, the work that goes into parks, despite the ever reducing resources, I think the officers do an excellent job, led by Polly Cook here and many others within the department. We'll look forward to adopting the recommendations as we go forward, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rafiq. I'll turn to the board for the recommendation on page 209, and I see everybody's happy with those recommendations. So thank you, Councillor Rafiq. And if you could move on to item 9, which is in Councillor Hayden's portfolio, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the Council's proposals to establish a habitat banking vehicle. The Environment Act requires development to provide a minimum 10% net gain in biodiversity. Where this is not feasible on site, there is provision for making off-site delivery through the purchase of biodiversity units, which would then be implemented elsewhere by a third party who is registered as a formal habitat bank. This report sets out how the council can become a provider of such units via an arm's length organisation utilising land owned by the council, with a view to helping facilitate land usage of the strategic partners in the future. So I don't know whether anybody else wants to make any comments on this, but I really welcome this, and again thank officers for being ahead of the game in terms of developing our own habitat banking vehicle. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Councillor Lamb, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And in the principle of the banking vehicle is not something I would be opposed to. The concern I have and the reassurance I'm looking for from officers is the establishment of this doesn't become a means of letting developers off the hook easily, and how we arbitrate when it isn't possible to deliver on site and when it is, and making sure that the default remains that where it is possible to deliver, this should be delivered on site or secondary as close to the development as possible. And this would be the fallback where you're in a site where it just isn't possible. It literally, there is no physical way that you could deliver biodiversity net gain on site. And I think that's the reassurance. Sometimes when you create something like this, there's almost a proactive push within the vehicle to try and get things, and it has to be, I'm sure everyone would agree, it's got to be on site first as the absolute priority, and this is only a fallback when there's no other possible option.
Thank you. Martin, would you like to come in, please?
Thank you, Chair. Just to comfort Councillor Lamb, government guidance and the council's own emerging local plan update, which contains a series of policies, particularly around this issue, both stress the need for on-site biodiversity net gain. But within some sites within Leeds, that won't always be possible. So it's important, I think, that the council has this bank for such circumstances where it can then divert some of those off-site monies, in the same way that sometimes within Leeds, we can't deliver all of the green space that a site needs to deliver on site to appropriate locations. And the local plan update in draft also states that they should be within a locality if possible.
Thank you, Martin. Tom, please.
Yeah, I was just going to support what's been said, really, just to say commend the team for getting ahead of the game, because I think this is something that's going to become increasingly important in the next few years. And, you know, reinforce that point that not just through this, but through the local plan update, we have the opportunity to make sure that the sort of space between buildings rather than the buildings themselves are the thing, you know, are as much taken into account. We're at a property and regeneration seminar this morning where we received really good feedback from, you know, independent people outside the region about how Leeds has approached that issue, and the Our Spaces strategy that we've had has been a good example of that. But there's always more to do. But I think creating that culture within the sector where they, you know, they know what's expected of them in the way that you've described, that we would be expecting that first, is certainly what we're trying to do.
Thank you, Tom. Councillor Hayden, please.
Thank you. Yeah, just to reassurance, we would always want it on site first. I mean, if we didn't have this this vehicle, then there would be private habitat banking vehicles that would, and that wouldn't necessarily mean that any of the biodiversity stayed within net gain, stayed within Leeds, if not, because there is in the legislation the option for even taking it outside of the district. So this vehicle, having our own vehicle, if it can't be on site, means that developers have got somewhere immediately to go to make sure that it is as local as possible. And again, I want to thank officers for having this ready to go, so that we can ensure that that biodiversity net gain stays as close as possible to the development and those people who need it the most. Thank you.
Councillor Lamb, please.
Yeah, sorry, just to come back quickly. I was wondering, is there an opportunity for town and parish councils to link into this as other potentially significant landowners in the city, who also have an interest very much in this agenda? Is that something that's part of the thinking, or if not, is it something we could look at?
Martin, please.
Yeah, there's the possibility of that kind of arrangement where there's strategic partners that may wish to bring their land in. That's an opportunity. And another example of that would be the upper air catchment, where we're doing work in terms of the natural flood management. So the vehicle can make use of those wider opportunities outside of our direct land ownerships in partnership with other stakeholders.
Thank you, Martin. I don't see anybody else wanting to speak on this item, so I'm going to turn to the recommendations on page 239, and I take it the board is happy with those recommendations. That's great, thank you. We're on to Councillor Venner's papers, please, and item 10.
Thank you. I'm bringing two papers today, both of which are in the area of our work around looked after children and care leavers. And the first paper that I'm bringing is a proposal to make being care experienced a protected characteristic. And I'm incredibly proud to bring this paper, and it follows the really powerful, moving deputation from care leavers at our last full council meeting, where I know a number of councillors were moved to tears by care leavers describing their experience, and they received a standing ovation from the whole chamber. So this is part of a national campaign led by a care leaver called Terry Galloway. And it says in the paper that 57 other councils have passed this resolution, but actually Terry contacted me to congratulate Leeds on taking the step and said we're the 77th. So actually a huge number of councils led by all political parties have made this decision to recognise being care experienced as a protected characteristic, to recognise the adversity and challenges and barriers that care leavers often face in their lives. The paper outlines the plan to set up an implementation group, which I'm planning to chair, which will take this work forward, because I'm really keen that we actually have a really clear work programme about what it means to recognise being care experienced as a protected characteristic. And of course, that group will involve care leavers, so they will be absolutely co-producing with us what it means and what changes we will make as an organisation in recognising care experience as a protected characteristic. It was a recommendation in the independent review into children's social care, the Josh McAllister report. It was one of the recommendations which unfortunately wasn't adopted by the government, but I'm really hoping it will be in the future. And there's certainly a lot of lobbying around this, you know, from care leavers, from councils who've made this step themselves, and from campaigning groups. The paper does include some examples of what it means, like the council is a big organisation. We are the family firm for our looked after children, and that gives us an opportunity to provide employment opportunities, internships, apprenticeships, etc. So that will definitely be one of the work streams coming out of the implementation group, will be what it means for us as an employer in terms of supporting career aspirations of our care leavers. However, the reason we haven't got loads of detail about what it will mean in practice is because it's really important that care leavers have a leadership role in determining what that is. And that's, so I'm really looking forward to setting up the implementation group and getting to work with them directly to look at what this will mean and how this will create more opportunities for them going forward. So yeah, it's with great pride that I'm bringing this paper, and we're joining a number of other councils that have already made this move. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Venner. Councillor Lamb, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think the first thing to say is to congratulate and thank the Leeds Care Leavers Council for the deputation that they brought, which was incredibly powerful and really set out the challenges that care leavers face. I think I very much welcome the report and the speedy response. It's a huge step in the right direction. Care leavers undoubtedly face huge disadvantages versus the rest of the population. And as their corporate parents, it's absolutely incumbent on all of us to be doing much more with this. And I suppose my one ask of Councillor Venner is that the implementation group is cross-party and there's opportunities for all parties to be represented. I don't think there's an elected member in this place that doesn't support the direction of travel here, and wants to see much better outcomes and much more support. So the offer's there to help and support, and I hope that's something that can be delivered.
Thank you. Councillor Venner, please.
Yeah, if I can just respond to that point, I think that's absolutely would be the right way forward, in the same way the corporate parenting board is cross-party. I think it would be important that there's representation from across the council. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we're all very touched by the deputation at council in January. So I'm going to turn to the recommendations on page 257, and obviously the comments have just been made around having the cross-party work on it as well. And I take it everybody is happy with those recommendations. That's great. So if we can move on to item 11, please, Councillor Venner.
Yeah, thank you. So this paper is a proposal to provide a financial uplift to our foster carers with regard to the fees and maintenance payments that they receive. We also provided the same level of uplift last year. Just to be really clear, this is obviously adding to our financial pressures, but it is already included in the annual overspend we're reporting in children's services. And we're doing this because it's the right thing to do, because our foster carers do need to be paid properly for the incredibly important and skilled work they do. But it's also something we can't afford not to do, because we have to recruit and retain our foster carers. Foster care delivers the best outcomes for children. It is better for children to be in a foster family than to be in other forms of provision. But also, as well as delivering the best outcomes for children, it is the most economic way of caring for our looked after children. And it's not usually the case that the thing that costs the least delivers the best outcomes, but it's absolutely the case with regard to foster care, as opposed to children being cared for in residential settings, especially if it's expensive residential placements. Our foster carers are in huge demand. They're in huge demand across the country. Every council is trying to expand its foster care workforce, and if we don't pay our foster carers competitively, they will go and work for independent fostering agencies, or they'll work for other authorities. We are, as well as this financial uplift, doing a huge campaign at the moment to recruit more foster carers. We particularly in foster carers to care for older children, siblings groups, and children with additional needs. And increasingly, foster care is a full-time job. Most of our foster carers don't have another job because the demands of the children are such. Although obviously we do have respite foster carers, and we do have foster carers who care for unaccompanied asylum-seeking young people alongside working. The vast majority of our mainstream foster carers, it's their only job because the needs of the children require that. The paper does include a delegation in future years that this decision around the uplift can be made by the Director of Children's Services, rather than having to come through this process every year as we have done this year and last year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Venner. Councillor Lamb, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think the first thing, again, to say is to thank the foster care community in Leeds for the job that they do, which is hugely valuable, vitally important. I think the uplift is welcome. Personally, I think there's a strong argument for going much further than we have on an invest to save basis. I agree with your line, Councillor, but it's something we can't afford not to do. The cost in terms of the outcomes for young people, it's clearly better in a foster care environment than in a residential placement of any form. From a financial point of view, there's a huge disparity in costs between placing someone with an in-house foster carer. Roughly speaking, I believe it's about £300 a week for an in-house foster carer, £900 a week for an external foster care placement. Not that £900 would be going to the foster carer or anything close to that, I would imagine. And then on average, £10,000 a week for an external residential placement. So to me, and what I'd like to see some work done, whether it's through a report to executive board, whether it's through scrutiny, is to really look at where the right balance is for paying people properly for this work. And surely there's a strong argument for shifting the balance. Instead of £10,000 a week going to an external residential placement, I'd much rather see a much higher amount of payment going to foster carers, which would help to retain the ones that we've got and help us to attract more people to do this vital work and get better outcomes for children. So while it's welcome that we're going this far, I think there's a piece of work again, and the offer is there to do it cross-party. And so I just, it sticks in my throat every time I think of the amount of money going to external residential placements. I simply cannot get my head round how it can cost so much. And I think, and not to get the best possible outcome for children at the same time. I think there's a big piece of work for us to do to say we need to think differently about this, and we need to look much more at the foster care community. So yeah, if anyone wants to propose, I'll absolutely back you to go further than this. I think it'll save us more money. But I think as well, we'd be open to doing some work separately to see how we can shift the balance of those external residential placements to recruit more people to do this work.
Thank you. Julie, please.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb, I welcome your comments, and that is exactly what we are doing. So we have, as you know, an investor save around foster care and around adolescents. And within that investor save, the proposal is that we create an additional level of foster carers in Leeds who will be recruited specifically for their skills and their experience and their commitment to adolescents in the city. So again, it's taking that very targeted approach. Currently in Leeds, we have 60% of our in-house carers, of our foster carers are in-house carers. We've done some analysis recently with between Leeds and our core cities and also our statistical neighbours. And actually that is not the case. You know, the majority of their children in foster care are actually in IFAs. So the fact that we've got 60% of our children in in-house foster care is a really positive, but absolutely we are continuing to drive that, and a key element of that being the invest to save to create the additional level of level 5 foster carers.
Thank you, Julie. Tom, please.
Thank you. Yeah, just to fully support what's been said and commend the team for getting to this point, and the high amount of foster carers that we have relative to, you know, the national average shows, you know, people do vote with their feet on this stuff, and the fact that we value foster carers so highly and that we want to work with them to, you know, make their lives easier and make the lives of the people they care for easier is absolutely at the heart of what we're trying to do. I do think that there are wider issues to bear in mind here that we have recently got the Treasury interested in, and I'm grateful that we've got a cross-party position on trying to enhance the provision in children's social care generally, but also look at the way that the market part of this works, because it clearly is a bit of a market failure at the moment in terms of what's happening. The other thing I just wanted to say is just, you know, it's also about how we as a city support foster carers as well, and the families, and all the work that we do around child friendly and the, you know, the child friendly awards and the business ambassadors that we have who often come alongside us and give certain, you know, advantages to foster families in the city. I think all of that is really important as well, that sort of softer side of, if you like, people just feeling valued by Leeds. And the more we can do on that, the better as well as the work that's been set out. And I think we could, you know, we need to continue to try and do that as well.
Thank you, Tom. Councillor Venner, please.
Yeah, just to add to that, when I have met foster carers who are fostering for us who've come from IFAs, they always say that they've moved to us because of the level of support we provide and the enrichment and the other aspects that Tom's just mentioned, which are in addition to paying appropriately. As Julie said, we are creating additional level of foster carers who will be paid at a higher rate with specific skills to support adolescents. As it is with this uplift, we compare very favourably to our neighbouring authorities. I think we're the highest payer in one category and in the higher range for the rest, and that does make us competitive. But in addition to that, there is the additional support that we provide as well, child friendly, all the enrichment activities. And in addition to that, we're developing our additional children's homes, which is all about keeping our children in Leeds, keeping them out of the very expensive residential placements, which we're all opposed to. As I've said before, it is an obscenity that there's a market in vulnerable children, and I think we're in agreement about that and the need to have a sufficiency strategy that means that we're supporting our children in Leeds, ideally through fostering and through our own children's homes. And in addition to 60% of our children who are fostered being in our own foster families, we also have a much higher percentage than the national average of children who are in their own families, who are in kinship foster placements. So that's another priority, is to keep children within their families wherever that's possible and they can be safely fostered in their families. So thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. I don't see anybody else wanting to come in on this item, so I'll turn to the recommendations on page 274, and I take it the board is happy with those recommendations. That's great. Thank you, Councillor Venner. Thank you. I won't say a lot about these papers here. The first is item 12, the updated Best City ambition, which is our strategic proposals and intent of the organisation that goes along the budget. Like I say, will be the recommendation is that this goes to full council for agreement. So we don't often say much at this exec board at this point. So I put it to the board and see if there's any comments. Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, just be grateful if someone could clarify in recommendation B, the nature of the graphic design work that's been undertaken and who's doing that.
Mariana, can you help, please?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Lamb. It'll be our usual process on graphic design. It's the communications team that are doing that. It'll be in line with the, the family of strategies that we produce, but just modified and updated proportionately, ready to, propose this once it's agreed at full council.
Thank you. That's great. So, sorry, Councillor Lamb.
No, that's fine, Chair. No, as you said, this is going to full council, and I'm sure we'll have more things to say about it there. But if I can just note that I reserve my position on the recommendations for the purpose of this meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. We noted that, and I'll turn to the board, and I see everybody is happy with that, noting Councillor Lamb's position. Move on to item 13, which is the budget papers. I'll just ask before we move on to it, Victoria Bradshaw, our Chief Financial Officer, to give us a quick update, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. It's just to let you know that the papers within your pack were based on the provisional budget and with a provisional local government financial settlement. Since the papers have been published, we've had the final settlement now, and that meant that we've got additional resources of 189,000. This is mainly from an increase in two small increases in two grants, the services grant of 98,000 and the social care grant of 97,000, and a small reduction on the new homes bonus of 6,000. We're proposing that we put those in reserves, and that will help us deal with any materialising pressures in the new year to do with social care. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Again, as with the previous paper, these are 3 papers to go to full council at the end of the month. Don't propose to say a lot here other than to recommend them to full council. Councillor Lamb, please.
Yeah, and I take the same position as you. There'll be a lot more to say on budget day, I'm sure. It'd just be useful to get some comment and update on the extra money that the government announced for councils and what that will mean for this year's budget.
Thank you. We have shared this information with all members when we published the papers for today's meeting, that we received around 1.34% of the government's extra money, which was around 6.9 million, which, given that we have more children in external residential care placements than forecast, we've applied that money which arrived through the social care grant towards children's and family services for that area. Okay, I'm going to turn to the recommendations. Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, as with the previous item, just I reserve my position on this one, and there'll be much more to say in a couple of weeks, I'm sure.
I'm sure there will. With that, I turn to the board and I take it everybody's happy with the recommendation, noting Councillor Lamb's comments, and that's great. Thanks. So we'll move on to Councillor Cooper's papers, please.
Thank you, Leader. And the start of my papers is the financial health monitoring that I bring to Executive Board at every meeting. The position for this meeting is that we are noting an overspend of £39 million on month 7's position. We need to understand the position within the wider national context of a growing concern as an increase in number of councils are reporting overspends in the current financial year and significant estimated budget gaps in future financial years, which are providing a challenge to the financial sustainability. The report outlines the measures being undertaken to manage this projected overspend, but notes that use of reserves will be required to achieve a balanced position for 23-24. But also, it should be noted by Executive Board that this will impact on the resources available for 24-25 and future years. A couple of things to note in particular really is that the report includes the one-off refund that we received from WICA, in part thanks to the hard work by our leader to ensure that we did get this money from WICA in this year of £17.7 million. But unfortunately, due to the size of the overspend that we've got, it will be used to balance the budget at the end of the year, along with any other reserves that we have. Chair, I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Are there any comments on this paper, please? Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, again, it largely comes into budget conversations, and probably say more about it, but it's not great news, is it? We were told things were going to get worse before they got better last year, and then they got a bit better, and then they got worse and worse and worse. And I just wonder at what point we think the curve is going to be turned, particularly around children's social care. And are we confident that in month 1 next year, we're going to be still reporting a balanced budget, or can we already predict that there's going to be an overspend when we come back in March?
Councillor Cooper, please.
Thank you again, Leader. And as we've discussed, I think virtually every Executive Board recently has been the pressure on local government, and in particular around the increase in pressure on children's services. We are not unique in the country in terms of the pressure for funding around children's services and the inadequacy of the funding that we get from the government to allow us to do that job the way that we need to be doing it, which is why there's such a big overspend. As Councillor Lamb knows, there is an oversight board that's in place and meets on a regular basis. There's a cross-council directorate meeting at directors level to ensure that all that can be achieved and saved, and any efficiencies that can be driven is being done so, and it's done in a collaborative way with all directors, and I thank all directors and all their chief officers and staff for that commitment and that work that they've been undertaken, without which I fear we would have been in a worse position than we are in currently. It's not a position that any of us want to be in. But whilst we have a government that refuses to fund local government and children's services in particular in the way that it needs to be funded, I fear that we may continue with some pressures in children's services. I must say that any pressures that we've identified throughout this year have all been recognised in next year's forecast and next year's budget. So they are already in train for that work going forward. Thanks, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Somebody else want to come in on this item? I don't know somebody else, so I'm just going to turn to the recommendations on page 704 and I take it the board are happy with those recommendations. That's great. So we're on to item 15, please.
Thank you, Leader. The next item is the capital receipt report for Executive Board. And if I could just have noted in the minutes, please, that we are removing one of the items that have been included in Table 2 for inclusion of capital receipt. And that is Pudsey, Bolton Royd, former caretaker's property. That the school wish to discuss with us further, so we are suspending that from capital receipt inclusion at this point. So there's just that change for Exec Board members to note. We do have an annual update usually for capital receipt programme, and as Exec Board members know, it's been going for over 30 years now. It's delivered in excess of £600 million of capital receipts in that time. And we've had to reduce the size of the council's estate by disposing of some surplus property in key action to support the medium-term financial plan and the budget strategy, as we've just heard, is a difficult position. We constantly review the operational property portfolio, and we've focused the work on back office accommodation over the last 10 years. However, in order to deliver the kind of cost savings that we now need, this work is shifting to look at properties across all our localities on a phased basis. So the work is ongoing and is being undertaken in the context of all the service reviews that have happened and transformational change to service delivery within our communities. And we aim to have a smaller but more fit for purpose estate with a number of services co-locating within accessible buildings, which can be more easily booked by community organisations. You can expect to see further reports brought to Executive Board setting out in more detail around specific properties later in the year. And we're hoping to bring opportunities for more community asset transfers to be considered, and again will be subject to a further report in Executive Board. I think it's also worth noting that this year we're expecting to total over £22 million in receipts within this financial year, and on top of that we're expecting the receipt from St George's House after that has been progressed. I'll leave it there for any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Are there any comments on this paper, on the above line items? Councillor Lamb, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There's no specific question. It's just really to say I would want to reserve our position on this as we're still studying the capital programme, and we'll make our comments in the budget debate next month.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lamb. I turn to the board with Councillor Lamb's comments about reserving his position. I take it the board is happy with those recommendations. Like I say, we've got the pink papers to come later. So we'll move on to item 16, please, Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Leader. And the last of my reports is the annual health, safety and wellbeing assurance report that's before us today. The report outlines a number of areas of performance, of key achievements during the period, and also some how Leeds City Council is managing their health, safety and wellbeing within its organisation. So just a couple of points here to for Exec Board to note. I'm sure you'll read the detail in the report, have done already, that we've had 0 enforcement action for the 10th year in a row. And there is in the report a flagged area where accidents have been reported with specified injuries are slightly up, but the comparable figure is pre-COVID, where we are in line with what it would have been pre-COVID, as opposed to the previous report, which was during COVID and impacted by those figures as well. All the work that you'd expect to have been done by the teams has been done. So in terms of asbestos, fire risk, water management, etc. And there's been a lot of work done on the employee assistance programme with quite a large amount of our staff using that service that's now been available. So that's really encouraging to see. Yeah, I'll leave it there for now, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any comments on this paper, please? Councillor Lamb, please.
Yeah, two points, Chair. Number one is, why is it coming here? Would it not be better that this went to scrutiny where this can be looked at in more depth? And the second point is the data we're asked to look at and note is a year out of date, which is not terribly helpful. So the 2 points and suggestions would be, in future, this goes to scrutiny and it goes when there's more up-to-date information available.
Councillor Cooper, please.
Thanks. And just for reassurance, Councillor Lamb, it does go to scrutiny as well. We report on the performance and the health, safety and wellbeing assurance report will go to scrutiny following this as well.
In terms of the timeliness? But the data in the papers is a year old.
Mariana would like to come in, please.
Yeah, this is slightly later than we would hope it would be normally reported, so apologies for that. But as Councillor Cooper said, regular information does go to scrutiny on the health and wellbeing indicators on a more routine basis. That is as in time as it can be in terms of the data being available.
Tom, please.
Yeah, just to sort of reiterate the support of CLT for this as well. We have a standing item on health and safety on the CLT agenda, and I think it's very important that we stay, on top of this agenda. The issue, one issue to flag: the violence, abuse, and aggression against staff. I think is an area that we're very attuned to, and particularly coming out of lockdown and COVID, and the fact that we've got lots of people who are sometimes frustrated with things. We have to have a really close eye on supporting our staff in dealing with those situations, and we'll continue to work on that. But thank you to the team, to Lisa and the team who've really helped us I think move this on this year, and I think we need to do that again, as Councillor Cooper said, into the future, and we'll look forward to hearing scrutiny helping us with that as well.
Thank you, Tom. There's no further comments on this. I shall turn to the recommendations on page 781, and I take everybody is happy with the report, noting Councillor Lamb's comments and discussion around figures going to scrutiny as well. So take everybody's happy with the report. That's great. That brings us to the end of the public part of this meeting. So I shall draw it to a close there. Thank you, everybody.